have another technical session. So Marco ran away. He didn't want to get technical. So here we are. We're at Zero Trust World 2025 in Orlando, hosted by the amazing ThreatLocker. They've pulled together an incredible community of folks here to learn. 3 days of learning and labs and all kinds of sessions, and some good technical stuff too. I just did a chat on Metasploit and Nmap. And,
very interesting stuff.
Yeah,
so
good stuff there. And you have 2 sessions. What are they?
I am doing a Windows security review tomorrow, which is kind of just going over some basic concepts of what you can do that are native to Windows to secure your system that branches to workstations, servers. We kind of go into a little bit of registry hardening techniques, and we kind of go over some group policies, useful group policies, kind of stuff you can do in that, and a bit of event logging. A lot of event logging they'll use to ingest these logs into their SIM systems, so they want to make sure they have that information. So.
All right, so everybody, I'm here with Adam Fuller. He's Special Projects at ThreatLocker, doing these presentations, and we're going to dig in and get a little deeper insight into what those are and what people can learn. So let's start with the Windows security. So back in my day, we called that hardening.
Yeah, still the same concept.
Still the same thing?
Yeah, a lot of people kind of use...
What's different these days?
There's not too much. I mean, the word is kind of used interchangeably, but hardening techniques could simply be walking down your registry from editing, auditing. A lot of it is auditing based too, kind of like having that visibility of what's going on, what's changing in your system, especially when you talk about some of the most powerful machines in a Windows infrastructure, which we're talking Active Directory, could be a terminal server, file server, could be a DNS server, so on. So,
SQL Server.
yeah, you name it. So,
all the servers.
Yep.
And then, of course, the users sitting behind the desktops and the laptops.
Yes, sir.
The mobile stuff as well.
Yep.
What types of things are you actually showing the settings for?
So
like protecting the registry and the directory.
Yeah, so we kind of like break into some of it is more surface level, I'd say. Some of it kind of breaks into the concepts of it. So I guess an example of that would be useful group policies, kind of getting back to auditing. We go over basic auditing, advanced level auditing, and some of this could be if you're making directory changes, users logging in, logging off, and you can also set like success or failure rates on this. So assume you set a failure rate, and you can kind of see brute force attacks occurring in real time. A lot of these logs will then ingest into a system. We'll say Splunk, for example.
Yep.
So then, your SOC engineers can kind of review everything that's happening.
Okay. So one thing I found, and maybe you can speak to this as well, is I've seen a lot of IT folks here, not just security people. So people who are responsible for desktop management and help desk and passwords and onboarding, offboarding people, which a lot of this they're responsible for.
Most definitely.
And oftentimes just told by security, go do this stuff.
Yep.
So how do you see the interaction with what you're providing and IT and security all coming together? Do you see a tighter collaboration there these days?
I would say it's not just valuable to security administrators. I actually come from a networking and system administration background, so having that overall generalized knowledge is it's good. You kind of understand the tools that you can implement in your environments, what those tools do, and then from there it just makes you a better technician overall. So,
and then you talk about auditing. So I heard a lot of events and logging type stuff. Do you also look at state in terms of auditing? Like, what's our current state? Is it a good policy given what we want to achieve?
Yeah, I mean,
or is it more event driven?
You can kind of, I would say it's more event driven, but ultimately, just based on what's happening, you could argue that, okay, this is causing too much noise. It's not valuable to my organization. There might be certain compliance implications associated with some of these events. So compliance might more or less say, and it could come from your security engineers as well, that, hey, we need to log these events. Most of the time, I would argue that it's insurance driven.
So cyber insurance.
Yeah, people do not want to get denied claims, so they make sure that they're checking all those boxes, and sometimes it matters to them, sometimes it doesn't. They just want to check the box, but ultimately, the configuration is what matters, and the security is what matters. So,
yeah, it's interesting. I've heard cyber insurance a few times now in the last couple of days.
Yeah,
that's more so than compliance. They're both check boxes. The other session you're doing, the tenants, 365 tenants.
Yeah.
So what's is that more of the networking in the cloud? Or
yeah, some of it.
What's going on there?
Well, even in security review, we kind of touch on some of the networking roles that would be associated with a Windows server. Yeah, so DHCP, it could be a DNS server, things of that. And then we talk a little bit about micro-segmentation. It's more of something you would configure on your firewalls and switching, but in terms of 365, that's really just tenant security. So when you're talking tenant security, these things are identity and access management tools. So they really act as a front door to access your resources and access your data. So this could be an application, it could be a service principal built out in Azure, it could be just simply a user login. So you kind of treat it as the front door, and then ultimately what we're doing is going over some configuration where you could lock down access via policy, conditional access in this case. You can also go into some of the productivity app security settings that you can implement to help improve security of your environment.
Right. So two-part question. How are there any assumptions for people coming in to say we think we have things right, or are they using the defaults and they're looking for guidance?
Some of these guys might be okay with security defaults. So what security defaults is in Microsoft 365, it's just a baseline set of policies. This goes over blocking legacy authentication, enforcing multi-factor authentication on your admins and your user accounts, and also enforcing or requiring a certain amount of MFA prompts when accessing your Azure management portal. So most people in a smaller organization might set security defaults and say, hey, we're okay. Ultimately, I don't think it's enough.
Right.
It will help.
I think you touch on that in your
yeah. So it'll help with like basic level of protection, but you can add far more restrictions with conditional access. So,
and then do you start to touch on, because healthcare, small healthcare is different than a regional banks, different than a small manufacturer, or even a large enterprise in many of those sectors. How much do you get involved in guiding or providing advice on fine-tuning policies and controls and things like that?
So with 365, we kind of go over some of the more heavy-hitting policies that you can implement. Something like this would be token protection policies. That's actually in preview right now, so it only applies to Windows machines. But most people are running a Windows shop. They might have some Macs and stuff, but it's not a bad thing to implement. We also talk about phishing-resistant MFA. That's something that's kind of trending quite a bit in the industry. So
what's going on there?
Basically, traditional MFA can be phished, and it can be phished by someone calling you up.
Trying to get the code, right?
Yeah, let's just assume that they already have your credentials. They call you up, kind of introduce a sense of panic or a sense of urgency into your users and say, hey, we need the code that we just sent you. You give them the code, now your MFA is just phished. So phishing-resistant MFA kind of adds a proximity element to that, and it could be a certificate, it could be a FIDO2 key, think like YubiKeys or like a hardware key you plug in. It could also be Windows Hello for Business. So that's biometric data or a PIN that stores itself inside of a TPM chip that are pretty much like
embedded on the device.
Inside the actual device. So realistically, if you've bought a computer in the past 5 years, there's a good chance you already have a TPM chip. You just need to utilize it. So I'd say some of it's surface level, but some of the policies kind of break into a little more in depth and like, hey, try to focus on these policies because one, this is what's trending in the industry right now, which is MFA being phished, and cookie theft. So we try to focus on those specifically.
Okay.
So
Now, we'll wrap up here, but
no problem.
a lot of what you present sounds like end user or end organization, but I presume a lot of your MSPs
Yeah.
like jump at the bit for this kind of stuff
Most
too, right?
definitely, most definitely. And I think MSP, I actually come from an MSP, so I kind of have a certain level of background in that area. But yeah, I mean, aside from user training, your administrators will do their best to configure it, but user training is, these are the guys getting their cookies stolen. These are the guys getting their MFA phished. So you kind of want to, one, train them, and two, implement policies to kind of stop that from happening in the first place. So,
Perfect. Well, it's all, I love talking about risk management, and
yeah,
we're talking very focused risk management.
Most definitely.
At the end point. Adam, it's a pleasure chatting with you.
yeah, thanks, sir.
Good luck with the sessions
Appreciate
and
you.
all that's going on this week. I know people are digging it and soaking it all up.
Oh yeah,
And
a lot of information. So,
got to raise that bar. So thanks everybody for listening and
Yeah.
watching. Thanks Adam for joining
yeah,
me.
thanks for having me.
And we'll see you all in the next one.